We've all thought about it, right? The chance to go back in time, to fix that one mistake, to say something you never got to say. It really is the ultimate fantasy of control. But what if that fantasy is actually a trap? What if the very act of changing the past, no matter how small, is a tragedy just waiting to unfold? So let's just ask it straight up. If you could, would you? It seems like such a simple question, but the answer is, well, it's incredibly complicated. Because wrapped up in that desire is this deep, deep misunderstanding of how time might actually work. So let's dive into it. We're going to explore the two great perils that you face the moment you try to tamper with yesterday. And we're going to frame this whole thing as a six-act tragedy. We'll follow a hypothetical time traveler on their big quest for control, only to watch them find absolute chaos. This structure is really going to show us how that dream of fixing the past completely and totally falls apart. Okay, Act 1. Every good tragedy starts with a fatal flaw. And for our time traveler, that flaw is hubris, this arrogant belief that the huge, tangled web of history can be changed with, like, surgical precision. The motivation is always so pure, isn't it? I just want to prevent an accident, stop a bad decision. The traveler is convinced they can isolate one single moment, tweak it, and then pop back to a perfected present. They think it's a simple, targeted mission. But they are about to run headfirst into the number one rule of time travel. So, our traveler starts planning their little intervention. But right away, they come up against the most famous obstacle in all of temporal physics, the grandfather paradox. You knew this was coming. So what is the grandfather paradox, really? Well, it's not some monster waiting in the past. It's more like a glitch in causality. It's the universe's firewall, preventing a self-contradiction. You just can't erase the very conditions that allowed you to exist in the first place. And here's how that impossible loop plays out. Step 1, you travel to the past. Step 2, you stop your grandparents from ever meeting. And poof, Step 3, you are never born. Which means, Step 4, you couldn't have traveled back in time to stop them. It's this perfectly neat, self-canceling equation, a logically impossible crime. So the takeaway here is that the grandfather paradox is a pretty clear, understandable rule. Our traveler, being clever, thinks, okay, easy, I just have to avoid doing anything that directly erases me. I won't go anywhere near my own timeline. They think they've outsmarted the system. Oh, they are so wrong. All right, Act 3. Having neatly sidestepped that obvious logical trap, our traveler goes ahead with their minor change. But this is where the real horror begins, with the danger that is so much more chaotic and insidious and completely uncontrollable. Think about it. The traveler avoided the big flashing warning sign, only to step right into a hidden minefield. They didn't stop their own birth, but they did something else, something tiny. Maybe they stepped on a prehistoric bug. Maybe they caused a tiny traffic delay. They just didn't realize that, in the timeline, there are no small actions. And this brings us to the second great peril, the butterfly effect. Now, unlike that targeted logical paradox, the butterfly effect is a sprawling, unintentional disaster. It's not about creating a contradiction. It's about a tiny causal ripple that grows and grows, rewriting everything in its path. And you really gotta get this distinction. It means, yeah, you can change the past. The timeline isn't totally fixed, but any interaction, no matter how small, ripples forward into total, wild, unpredictable divergence. You can't control the outcome. You don't return to a fixed world. You return to a world that's become completely alien. And here we are, Act 4, the turning point of our whole tragedy. For a minute, it seems like these are two separate problems, right? One you can logically avoid, the other you just have to live with. But what happens when the chaotic ripple becomes so precise that it triggers the very paradox you tried so hard to avoid? 10 minutes. That's it. Just 10 minutes. What could possibly happen in 10 minutes? Our traveler makes a tiny, tiny change, delaying a romantic encounter for their great-grandparents by just 10 minutes. Harmless, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with stopping them from meeting. Or so they thought. This is what we call the precision threshold. It is the razor's edge. It's that terrifying moment a seemingly harmless, butterfly-level change becomes so specific, so sensitive, it creates a grandfather-level consequence. And this is the mechanism. It's horrifying. A 10-minute delay changes everything down at a cellular level. The result isn't just a world that's a little different, it's a genetically different person being born. A different great-grandparent, which means a different grandparent, a different parent, and ultimately, not you. And there it is. The traveler's harmless ripple just crossed the threshold. By creating a 10-minute delay, they accidentally committed the very logical crime they were trying to avoid. They've erased themselves from existence, not with a bang, but with a microscopic, chaotic whisper. So our traveler is now erased by their own chaotic mistake. Let's just step back for a second and really compare these two awful fates, because they are two fundamentally different ways of losing your entire world. On one hand, you've got the grandfather paradox. It's a clean, logical negation. You just cease to be possible. On the other hand, you have the messy, chaotic unraveling of the butterfly effect, where you might still exist, but you return to a present that is completely alien to you, a world that is no longer your home. So let's look at them side by side to make it super clear. The grandfather paradox is a logical loop, and its main risk is your own existential negation. The butterfly effect, though, is a causal ripple, and its primary risk is returning to an unrecognizable reality. And as we just saw, one can terrifyingly lead right into the other. And this brings us to our final act, the devastating lesson from our traveler's journey. The ultimate tragedy isn't that the past is unchangeable, it's that the past is fundamentally, absolutely uncontrollable. I think this is the absolute best way to think about it. The grandfather paradox is like a big red "do not enter" sign on a door, but the butterfly effect, that's the very ground you're standing on being made of quicksand. One is a clear rule to follow, the other is the dangerous, chaotic nature of the entire landscape. So here's the final lesson. True control over time is a total illusion. Every single trip to the past, every tiny interaction, it isn't an act of precision, it's an act of complete surrender to chaos. It's rolling the dice with your entire existence and the world you know as the stake. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? We look at our past like a story we wish we could go back and edit, for a happier ending. But maybe the past isn't a story at all. Maybe it's a raging river, and the moment you step into it, you don't change its course, it just pulls you under.